This video is brought to you by Audible. Go to audible.com/polyphonic or text polyphonic to 500 500 to get started today. On December 5th, 1976, Bob Marley took the stage for the Smile Jamaica concert with a bullet lodged in his arm. 48 hours earlier, 7 unknown gunmen had broken into Bob Marley's house, where Marley and his band were rehearsing for the show. They fired a hail of bullets that ended up finding members of Marley's entourage, as well as his wife and the singer himself. Miraculously, all survived. To this day, we don't know who was behind the shooting, but the most likely culprit was Edward Seaga's Jamaican Labour Party, possibly with the backing of the CIA. At the time, Jamaica was in the midst of political strife. Gangs were roaming the streets and fighting each other, with arms sold to them by the CIA. The Smile Jamaica concert was advertised as a moment of unity, but instead it sowed further division. When Bob Marley agreed to perform, it was seen as a tacit endorsement for Michael Manley, Jamaica's incumbent prime minister and Seaga's political rival. It was Bob Marley's perceived support of Manley that led to the attempt on his life just 2 days before the show. And yet, bullet wounds still raw, Marley agreed to play the show. When asked why, Marley said, "The people who are trying to make this world worse aren't taking a day off. How can I?" So Bob Marley took the stage in front of a crowd of 80,000 people. He had only agreed to play one song. Instead, he played a transcendental 90-minute set for a country being torn apart by internal strife and external meddling. It was the last show that Bob Marley would play in Jamaica for more than a year. The morning after the show, Bob Marley boarded a plane to England and entered a self-imposed exile. When he left, Marley was despondent, feeling betrayed by the country he had devoted his life to. But then something incredible happened. While abroad, Marley's outlook changed. He found a renewed vigor and began to evolve his sound. And on June 3rd, 1977, 6 months to the day after he had been the victim of an assassination attempt, Bob Marley released the album that would define his career and transform him from a national icon to a global prophet. Exodus. By the time Bob Marley left Jamaica, Rastafari had become tied to every aspect of his life, especially music. Rastafari is a religion that grew out of Jamaica in the 1930s. It's an Abrahamic religion like Christianity and Judaism, but it relies on a unique reading of the Bible. Specifically, the Rastafari believe themselves to be the descendants of the Israelites, and thus to be God's chosen people. Its teachings parallel the experiences of the Israelites wandering the desert with that of the black diaspora, exiled from their homeland and abused by the systemic power of white colonialism. For the Rastafari, the evils of the world, especially those of the colonial world, are known as Babylon. Babylon is representative of the oppressive world driven by capitalism and materialism. It's put in direct opposition to the promised land of Zion, a place of unity, peace, and freedom. These two concepts are at the very core of Exodus, reflected in the album's two sides. The A side of the album is intense, dark, and deeply political, singing about the struggle against oppressive Babylon. The B side is the opposite, packed with songs of peace, love, and happiness. It's representative of the promised paradise of Zion. Coming off of his brush with death, Marley delivers these messages of hope and resistance with a deep spiritual tilt, asserting himself as a kind of messenger of Jah, the Rastafari name for God. This is evident from the opening moments of the album, where Bob Marley sets the mood with a dark, smoky guitar tone, and lyrics hinting at the supernatural. There's a natural mystic flowing through the air. Even if he feels that Jah is on his side, Marley's outlook is bleak. The events in his home country are still weighing heavy on his mind. Natural Mystic even dabbles with apocalyptic imagery, referencing the Book of Revelation, which says that trumpets will be blown to signify the end times. This could be the first trumpet. Might as In Natural Mystic, Marley sees a world full of hatred and suffering, and he hears a spiritual calling to fight against it.
Many more will have to suffer. Many more will have to die. Don't ask me why.
While Marley himself may not have the answers to the suffering in the world, he knows that it is wrong, and he's determined to fight it whatever the cost. He's backed in this fight by his faith, something that comes through in the next song, So Much Things to Say.
But I'll never forget no way they crucified Jesus Christ. I'll never forget no way they sold Marcus Garvey for rice.
Marcus Garvey was one of the most complicated, important political figures in Jamaican history. He was a black nationalist who famously predicted the rise of a black king in Africa. When Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie was crowned in 1930, many in Jamaica saw Garvey's words as prophecy, and Rastafari began to believe that Selassie was the second coming of Christ. In speaking about the persecution of Jesus and Garvey, Bob Marley is asserting his own righteousness. Marley's political activism brought powerful forces against him and often put him directly at odds with the police and laws of Jamaica. But Marley sings that he doesn't care about such laws.
Don't expect to be justified by the laws of men. By the laws of men. The truth got to prove my innocence. Although the wicked think they found me guilty.
The language that Bob Marley uses in his lyrics is a reflection of Rastafari's rejection of white colonialism. The Jamaican patois used by the Rastafari is deeply tied to their religion and serves to subvert the language of the colonizers. On the surface, I and I can mean we, but it contains complex, deeply spiritual meanings beneath. Among many other things, the phrase implies that all humans are one together, and that Jah is present in all humans. Marley's lyrics reflect this interconnectedness of all beings with a simple metaphor.
When the rain falls, it won't fall on one man's house. Stop it singing.
In the next two songs, Marley continues to use language as defiance, and Exodus grows more militant. The chorus of Guiltiness is a repetition of Woe to the Downpresser. The modification of oppressor serves to underline the negative forces of oppression, and the slow, repetitive drive of reggae is a perfect medium to call arms against this oppression. At times, it can almost seem like a gospel call and response, hammering the message into the listener's ears and encouraging them to join up and sing along. Woe to the Downpresser becomes a kind of war chant, driving ever forward against a powerful enemy.
Woe to the downpresser.
Guiltiness identifies this enemy as the big fish who always try to eat the small fish. Marley sounds raw and desperate as he sings about them.
They would do anything to materialize their every wish. Oh, yeah.
But when we reach the chorus, the defiant chant creates hope.
Woe to the downpresser.
This radical, militant streak continues in Heathen, a call to take up arms in the spiritual war against evil and oppression.
Rise, O fallen fighters, rise and take your stance again.
The dark, heavy drive of Exodus's first side culminates in the epic title track. Exodus is a musical shift for Bob Marley. Rather than being purely reggae, it pulls from the emerging worlds of funk and disco, with a heavy bass line from Aston Barrett and driving repetitive percussion from Carlton Barrett and Alvin Patterson. In expanding his sound, Bob Marley is expanding the scope of his trouble, calling not only to Jamaicans, but to the entire black diaspora.
Exodus. Movement of the people.
Lyrically, Marley is putting himself and his generation in the shoes of the Israelites, marching through struggle and oppression towards a promised land.
We the generation, tell me why. Tried through great tribulation.
Marley calls for another brother Moses, but to many he was assuming that role himself. While in England, Bob Marley established himself as an international artist, an icon in an ongoing global struggle. You can see why in Exodus. Backed by triumphant horns and Tyrone Downey's synthesizers, Marley calls for people to wake up to their own struggles.
Open your eyes. Look within. Are you satisfied with the life you're living?
But even as he's calling for a global movement, Marley thumbs his nose at the politicians of Jamaica. Michael Manley's campaign slogan had been "We know where we're going," a line that Marley slips into Exodus, changing the idea from an empty political slogan into a radical spiritual call.
We know where we're going. We know where we're from.
Exodus is the climax of Bob Marley's call to arms. It's an epic piece of music that takes all the tension, all the desperation, and all the rage that Marley felt after being shot, and transforms it into a timeless, enduring message. As the first side of the album ends, the listener is left angry and ready to fight for a better world. Then, when you flip the record over, Marley shows you what that world could be. The second side of Exodus opens on Jammin', a song about the simple joy of playing music, dancing, and having fun with good company, and with friends you love. In the bridge of Jammin', Marley calls up the image of his God and Zion, making it clear that this joy is the reward for the struggle of the first side.
Just seated in Mount Zion, it rules all creation. Here we're jamming.
Marley's lifted spirits likely came from his reception when he settled in London. Marley made fast friends there, including Junior Marvin, who would join the Wailers lineup on guitar. Another one of Marley's British friends was the music writer Vivian Goldman. In an interview with NPR, she described the vibe during the Exodus recording sessions. It was extraordinary. There were like tons of people there, loads of local Rastas, and just all sorts of people who would wind up there who were somehow in Bob's milieu. Amidst this scene, Marley met the beauty queen Cindy Breakspear. His relationship and romance with her is detailed in two soft love songs that populate the second side of Exodus, Waiting in Vain and Turn Your Lights Down Low. Following these songs about sex and love, we get one of the most famous pieces Marley ever wrote, Three Little Birds.
Don't worry about a thing. 'Cause every little thing gonna be alright.
In a vacuum, Three Little Birds seems like one of the ultimate songs of careless joy. But when we view it in the context of the album, it takes on a deeper meaning. It's a statement of Bob Marley's faith, and a statement of hope against a world that can be crushing, cruel, and oppressive. The comfort and happiness of the music is earned through hard struggle. The image of the Three Little Birds is allegedly a callback to Marley's home at Hope Road, the same place where gunmen made an attempt on his life. As the legend goes, canaries would sit on the windowsills at Hope Road and sing in front of Marley in the morning. But the three birds have meaning beyond that. They also represent Marley's backup singers, the I3s, and you could even read them as divine messengers from Marley's God.
This is my message to you.
The last song of Exodus, One Love, embodies the utopian vision of Rastafari's Zion.
One love, one heart, let's get together and feel alright.
It's Bob Marley reiterating that we are all of us connected in suffering and connected in joy. It's a plea to get together and change the world, to make a place where everyone can live in harmony. And it's Marley reaching out and embracing the wider musical world. The song is a medley with Curtis Mayfield's People Get Ready, which is itself a song of religious protest.
People get ready, there's a train a-coming.
There is one question I'd really love to ask.
One Love is a completely different emotion than the anguish and fury that make up Exodus's first half, but the two are intrinsically linked. On Exodus, Bob Marley channeled his spirituality into a clear statement. We live in a world wrought with evil and oppression, but it doesn't have to be that way. Marley preached to accept one's fellow man and to dismantle the systems that have led to so much sorrow and discord. And by preaching this message, Bob Marley found his own salvation. On April 22nd, 1978, Bob Marley made his return to his home country for a new Unity concert. This concert came to its peak during a performance of Jammin', when Bob Marley brought Michael Manley and Edward Seaga on stage and made the two shake hands. It was a huge moment in Jamaican history, and while it didn't solve the problems of the country, it cemented Bob Marley's role as a beacon of hope for the downtrodden. And as the systems of wickedness and oppression that Bob Marley fought against continue to this day, the message of Exodus remains important. Even as we're persevering through struggle, we must believe in a better world, and we must unite and fight to reach it. Exodus is a truly singular album in music history. Even making this video, there was so much that I wanted to say about it that I had to leave on the cutting room floor. If you want to learn even more about the album, you should check out the Book of Exodus on Audible. That book was written and narrated by Marley's friend Vivian Goldman, who experienced the making of the album firsthand. In the book, she weaves the story of Exodus into a wider tale of Bob Marley's incredible life and what he still means to the world to this day. If that sounds interesting to you, you can get that book absolutely free with a 30-day trial of Audible. Just go to audible.com/polyphonic or text Polyphonic to 500-500 to get started with that trial today. Audiobooks are a great way to fill your time while you're working out, commuting, doing chores, or even just playing video games. And Audible has more than just books too. They've also got podcasts, comedy, and even exclusive Audible originals. Personally, I'm a huge fan of Neil Gaiman, so I've been listening to the Audible original adaptation of his legendary Sandman comics. And honestly, the production value has floored me. It's really unlike anything I've ever heard before, and I can't recommend it highly enough. As an Audible member, you'll get 1 credit each month for any book title, as well as full access to the Audible Plus catalog. And on top of that, joining Audible is just a great way to support my channel and allow me to keep making these ambitious video projects month after month. So head on over to audible.com/polyphonic or text Polyphonic to 500-500 to show your support and get started today. Thank you all so much for watching.